Okay folks, I had to replace the fuel pump in the 94 GMC half-ton. There's no way I was taking the box off, and the tank wasn't coming off either. Finally I gave up and cut a hole in the box. So you can see there that it's about 3.5 inches from the front of the box. I should have made it 4. Next time make it 4 inches. I wasn't quite sure what I was going to use to cut the hole in the box, but all I had available to me was a angle grinder. The angle grinder has a bit of a wide grinder blade in it, but I decided to go with it anyway. And I was able to do the cutting without providing any great sparks underneath. It actually worked pretty good. The left and right side was figured out by just looking down between the cab and the box and making sure that I cut outside of the tank area. Now there's a problem too. If you're going to do this, give yourself a little bit more space on the left side. That's the side with all of the pipes and hoses and stuff like that. Next time I'd give myself probably 2 more inches, move over 1 whole rib in the box. And the reason for that is it's really hard to get the wrenches down in there. I actually had to take the pump out of the tank before I could get the wrenches on the nuts in order to loosen them. So bad move. Next time I know better. And so the price of the complete assembly for the fuel pump, pipes, fuel gauge, and all that stuff was $289. I am not paying that. The pump alone was $69, so that's what I paid for the pump, was about $69. I had to be pretty careful because, as you can see, there's an awful lot of rust on my pipes. So the liquid, the shiny stuff that you see on there, is an awful lot of spray lubricant. Could be WD-40 or some silicone lubricant, and I wanted to make sure that the threads on the nuts cracked loose without me twisting off the pipes. So I used my line wrenches and worked pretty carefully. They actually broke loose pretty easy. I was quite surprised at how easy the threads were to crack loose. Quite happy too. You can certainly believe that. I suspect that the pump motor had been replaced once in the past. The reason I'm saying this, I think, is that the electrical connections on the new pump were the same as the old pump that was already in the tank. And the kit comes with a conversion connector that you have to change to fit a new pump compared to the original. So because mine just snapped right on, I suspect this pump's been replaced once already, sometime in its past life. So these shots are of the fuel pump as it's all disassembled, and I'm replacing one pump with the other pump. I probably got off easy in the replacement job because the original pump that I took out was the same as the one that I was putting in, so there were no electrical connections to change, as the kit mentioned. Some of the hose clamps and everything just came off really easily. There's an old fuel filter. I should have replaced it with a new filter, but I wasn't thinking when I bought the parts. No doubt I have no warranty on my pump at this time. The liquid wrench there is just for spraying all over the rusty parts to make sure that I don't damage the pipes when I'm cranking them together, and I just want to keep everything lubricated, and so that there's no rust also going up the pipes. And a new shot of the tank opening and the new O-ring just before I put a whole bunch of grease on the opening so that the cover would slide in nicely. There was grease on the old one, so I'll put grease on the new one. The only wire I had to cut was a ground wire that goes from the sending unit itself to the wiring harness, so I had to take my wire cutters and cut that. And of course, in the new kit that comes, there's a couple of crimp connectors anyway, which you're supposed to use inside the tank, but I used one of those for the external connector that I had cut. Okay, let's see if we can get this thing in here without wrecking anything. Now the problem is that we have to hook up all of these hoses first, because I didn't leave myself much room, obviously. So I'm going to have to tighten up all of these hoses before I actually put the collar back in here. I watched somebody else's video on YouTube where they were using a steel chisel and a steel hammer to rotate the collar on the top of the gas tank. If you've ever taken automotives, one of the things they teach you there is don't hammer steel on steel when you're playing with gasoline. That causes sparks, I think. I think that's what they said. Anyway, I use brass, which is what they taught us in apprenticeship school. Everything now is fastened on tightly. The vehicle runs. It started up right away, which is great. And the fuel tank gauge works. So I should be ready to close everything off and get on the road again. In order to provide some kind of support for the cover when I put the piece back into the box, I used some sheet metal strapping that comes when you install hot air ducting in your basement, and I cut those to length and I put those underneath the ribs in the box and drilled some holes and just put some sheet metal screws through to hang on to them. Okay, now it comes time to put the cover back on, and you can see the problems on using a grinding wheel that has a really thick blade, and that grinding blade created a huge gap. So when I put it all down, how are you going to fill all of that gap? I ended up doing 2 or 3 applications of window caulking gun compound, paintable stuff. And it took 2 or 3 applications before I finally got the gap filled. I didn't have to rivet the cover back down because there certainly was enough goo. And when it was all over, I just put my rubber liner in.